Happy Friday, everybody.
Morning.
What
Happy
does that even
Friday.
mean? Happy Friday. Hello.
Happy Friday.
I haven't had a Friday in 10 years.
You're due.
Exactly. Gotta make one there, Jason. All right. So today I want to talk to you about 6 stages of real estate mastery according to me. All right. And it's kind of me putting together some milestone points that we can think about and uh, give you a little refresh and way to reframe some of the ways we think about and do things. Hey, Eric Todd, how you doing, buddy? Um, the first thing I want to talk about, which sometimes is overlooked, which is making the effort to understand the product and the process. And what's the product? It's not a dumb question, but what's the product? Nobody.
I
Us.
would say it's our market knowledge.
So I guess
Brand.
so. The product is the properties that we sell and our ability to interpret the data and the valuations for them. I think a lot of us do a much better job at the second part of it, like comparing homes and understanding that part, as opposed to maybe even explaining the basics of the real estate, the product that they're buying. Um, when you go to show or even list a property, and I'm going to talk more about maybe showing a property to a prospective buyer, like who goes into a lot of the details about the attributes of the house, as opposed to walking them through, and just giving them a tour. Robert?
Yeah.
So what do you do like when you go through that might be different than a lot of your peers?
Well, first of all, I will have gone through before I go through with my client, so that I'm aware of the flow of the house, the benefits of it, the, and the essential parts about it that I think would be beneficial to me if I was buying the house. Um, and I will have also have, heard from the sellers what was special to the house for them. Give all this extra information that, buyers might not see just by walking through the house.
And I think uh, ge geographically it's very different as well because I think, if you're, for example, selling in Florida, one of the biggest things that I think we look at is roofs and, wind mitigation. Is that something that's pretty big when you show a house?
Well, not necessarily those, but, up here we have things like, knowing about knob and tube wiring, and what kind of an issue that might be to a buyer, or seller, and being able to talk about that and talked about how to mitigate something like that.
I mean, if you were uh, relocating from Florida to the Northeast, you might even have to deal with underground oil tanks and other unique challenges here geographically. But in Florida, is are roofs one of the biggest things? And I see Jason, you're always on camera. Is that one of the big things in your market? Age of roof?
Oh, roofs, anything insurance related. So, your wind mate, your roofs, your water heaters, those are, you almost have to know them before you even write the contract, because if not, you're going to have problems getting that contract through.
And even do they look at like the structure of of the roof to see how it's connected as well, right? Doesn't
I
that impact
mean,
insurance?
insurance companies will look at, is it a gable? Is it this? Is it that? I mean, I don't memorize them, but there are certain credits that certain companies give, and I see it from one house to the next. It's not a lot, but yes, there is some of that. I've seen it, I just don't know it.
And how about to our friends out in St. Louis or Illinois? Are there quirks that you look for when you're showing a property for the product knowledge of the actual home?
I'll go.
Anybody?
It's
Go ahead.
Janet. Pretty much when I'm showing a property, I'm looking at the foundation, trying to show the buyer, if it has enclosed soffits, pointing out the different vinyl sidings that we have, the different styles. So just trying to teach them about the property, what to look for, the windows, structures, that kind of stuff. I mean, some people don't even know what a tilt-in window looks like and how to open it. So it's just showing them the differences in cabinetry, what's an upgrade, what's not. Just try to show them that way. But as far as, we don't have to deal with the wind mitigation or anything like that. Like my daughter's had to when she lives in West Palm Beach. So big difference from Florida.
And ignorantly, do we have basements out there or not often? Or
Yes,
yes?
people prefer to have basements here because we've got earthquakes, we've got tornadoes. So having basements is a big deal here. So then in the basement, you're going to have a sump pump pit, probably a sump pump, whether you have one or not. You're checking for water issues, what's the grade of the property. And then if you're in rural Missouri and rural St. Louis, you're looking for septics and wells and all that good stuff.
Yep. So as you can see, it's quite different, what we look at, and then the styles of homes, not just the functionality. Hey, I want a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You overlay that into condos, for example. There's different layers of conversation, right? Is the association solvent? Is the building meet its 40-year inspection if you're in Florida? Here's a big one. Do they allow investors, or a non-owner occupant? And I hate to say it, but, I learn a lot from the mistakes that we make. Okay. Some communities won't even let a family member live in a property. They consider that to be a rental. I don't know if that's commonplace or not, but we had a big to-do about that. So once we know the product, maybe talk about the electrical service, how old are the mechanicals. I don't think your run-of-the-mill agent is going through all of that detail when they're kind of waiting for the home inspector to go do that. And I think that would probably, be something that at least, a light version we should all know, just like, we should all probably know the basics of how does somebody qualify for financing, right? I don't think we should be doing that, but we should understand the fundamentals, and we should understand the basics of, hey, this home has, a 110 service. This home has a larger electrical panel. This home has a panel that a lot of people are replacing. All of those things are kind of like the product knowledge of the house. The second level of knowledge, I would say, is the inventory knowledge, the comparative knowledge, right? That's part of the product or the comparison. And then the third piece that we really need to know is the contracts, right, which are always changing, and the workflow process. I mean, many of you might think, well, what the hell else is there after we do all this, right? But those are the things that, are, in my opinion, table stakes that we really need to do. And sometimes some of us may have more emphasis or more knowledge on one or two of those components, but not all of them. I remember, Sandy, one of our agents here, with the new agents, she'll actually walk them through and explain all the aspects and attributes of houses to her newer team members. And I really think that's really amazing and sometimes overlooked. So the second part of sales mastery is discipline, right? Because what's one of the benefits to being an independent contractor in real estate?
You work for yourself. We write our own schedule.
Who said that you make your own schedule?
Tiffany did.
Okay, yeah. So I think, you know, we have the illusion of complete freedom. Oh, yeah, I can work the hours I want. I can make my own schedule. But in reality, Tiffany, is it really that freeing, or is it just different?
No, it's just different. You just justify your time differently, I guess I would say.
Right. And when you have an opportunity to service a client, sometimes aren't they at the most inopportune times?
Absolutely. I took a client on house showings that's an attorney in the city recently, and we were touring houses until 10 p.m.
Yep. And Tiffany, where are you out of?
New Jersey, Booton.
Putin. Okay. So just so everybody knows, and sometimes in the bad weather, if you want to get a listing or a really great buyer, plan a vacation.
Right.
It doesn't always seem like when you're on the way to the airport, somebody's coming in to buy tomorrow.
100%.
And you were giving me flack for not having a Friday in 10 years.
I'm just calling it like I see it, Jason.
And that vacation's got to be non-refundable.
Yeah. So discipline and commitment to prospecting, in my opinion, which is the second stage of mastery, is really what gives you the consistency, the continuity, and a large portion of the growth. Right? Has anybody ever heard of the concept win by noon? It's actually something that was a brainchild of a mortgage originator that I follow on social media. But I love the concept because you can have all the most important boxes checked before lunchtime, right? Because you probably have the freshest version of yourself in the morning when you start.
Well,
And you have, generally speaking, less
not till
interruptions.
10,
Right?
but okay.
If you, does anybody have a routine of prospecting in the morning from 8 to 10, 9 to 11, something like that? Anybody do that on a very consistent basis?
Religion.
I have my blocked out. Hi, Glenn.
So Glenn, when you have that system built in, and is it till 11 o'clock, or what's the cadence?
For me, it's 11 o'clock.
So in essence, if you've had a successful prospecting and you've done that in the morning, it really doesn't matter what else happens because you've already won, correct?
That's correct.
And the other stuff is administrative. It's stuff that's kind of necessary for most of us, but you can have already won the day by 11 or 12 o'clock if you build that into your process. If you're looking to do your prospecting, you're waiting to the end of the day, inevitably things are going to crop up, and it's going to interfere with your ability to be able to execute on that time block, or B, to be fully there because you might be thinking about other things. So, my advice to some newer people, some agents that are looking for a refresh, is try to do the hard stuff first. Do it first thing in the morning, get it done with. And then whatever happens the rest of the day, you've already had a big win because you've done the most important things. Okay.
Rob, what I lump into that too is if you have to have a difficult conversation with one of your clients, I try to do that right at the beginning of the day so that it's not weighing on me through the rest of the day and causing me to not be as effective as I could be.
Yep. And I have this on the sheet here, but I'm going to read this just because I think sometimes hearing it, Robert, again, on top of all of our comments will kind of reinforce it. Win by Noon is a time management and production philosophy built for sales professionals, especially real estate and lending professionals, centered on the idea of front load your day so the highest value, highest leverage activities are completed first. Now, the core idea of Win by Noon is you win the day when you win the day early by completing the activities that actually drive the business. And these activities are lead generation, follow-up, pipeline management, client communication. All these need to be done before distractions, buyers, and fatigue take over. Okay, it's written there, but I wanted to say it out loud so it's in your head. Prioritize revenue-producing activities first. Block your morning, treat it like an appointment with your future business. Track your activities, not just your outcomes, okay, because inputs are the controllable piece. This strategy creates predictable days. Mornings are more offensive and afternoons are more defensive of your time. I don't mean you're offending people, but it's being aggressive to getting your business. And it reduces decision fatigue. I think I once heard Elon Musk say that he always wears the same black shirt and blue jeans so that in the morning he doesn't have to spend any time thinking about what he's going to wear because there's cost to thinking about what you're going to wear. Has anybody heard that before?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
There is.
like, right? Yeah. So I mean, it's just so basic, but I mean, think about how much time you might waste 2 minutes every day or 5 minutes every day times a year. It's a lot of time. Most people lose the day reacting to emails, client fires, administrative tasks, meetings, and procrastinations. The concept of win the morning flips the script, okay? And you have your proactive things in the morning, reactive things in the afternoon. So that's number 2. Number 3, and all of these, like I think you can have 2 or 3 of these and you can have a very limited success until you get to pull all these together at some proficient level. But the third one is communication skills. How would you rate the communication skills overall for the industry? Let's take yourself out of the equation. You know, when you look at your peers and you look at the industry.
Not good.
Okay.
We're not really allowed to talk bad about other agents. Can we just put that out first?
Well, how about Jason, if we talk about it from the perspective of like, you know, there's a lot of opportunity for them to improve, right?
I think that opportunity exists, but I think that the vast majority, we have 1.3 million agents. We have about, I think somebody said 78,000 across the country that do any amount of volume. You know, so their communication skills, understanding what they need to do, how they need to communicate to get deals done. The vast majority of agents don't know how to communicate, but they also don't want to know how because they thought it was easy when they got into the industry, which is why they're leaving.
Now, I think a lot of people think selling is telling, right? And, you know, logically, it seems to make sense. If you're really smart, you want to tell them about the product and the process that they're going to, you know, undertake. But I think that's really an epic failure. And the reason I say that is because like a presentation or telling people, usually when you tell at the end of your presentation, what do most people say? Do you have any questions? Right? And then you're completely giving control over to the client because who has control of a conversation? The person asking the questions or the person being questioned?
Person asking.
The person asking questions, right? So that's something that is really, really important to recognize is that the person in control is the person asking the questions. And to be honest, no matter how good you are, you can assume needs of people, but you really don't know until you ask questions. So very few sales professionals understand how to ask a great question, and even few understand how to listen to the answer. Even fewer understand how to listen to the answer. Because have you ever had somebody ask you a question and then when you're answering, they're asking you the next question without even listening, or they're not paying attention? So I just mentioned that because it's just an awareness that we need to have. If you want to be interesting, be interested. If you want to be interesting, be interested in what they have to say. Take the time to examine, explore, understand, appreciate, and respect how our prospects see things by starting where they're at. Take the time to examine, explore, understand, appreciate, and respect how our prospects see things. It's very important. Objection handling, setting expectations, and closing skills. These skills are the ability to remove uncertainty, create clarity, guide prospects towards confident decisions by addressing concerns early, setting clear expectations, and leading with calm authority. Like objection handling, setting expectations, and closing skills, that seems like it should be three things, right? It should be three principles, but I've put it all together as one because these are the skills that, and I'm repeating myself, remove the uncertainty in the process, create clarity, and guide prospects towards confident decisions by addressing concerns early, setting clear expectations, and leading with calm authority. How many of us have seen our peers that whenever there's a problem, they try to make it bigger and then they try to be a hero? Has anybody ever seen that person?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh my God, we have termites. Like there's never been termites in a house before, right? So this is a core skill, and it's a mindset, it's a principle, it's an investment, it's a direction, it's the way that you handle yourself, it's the way that you set the expectations to run the process. It's a combination of being the general manager, the coach, and the quarterback all in one. Right? Because you're running the plays that take us to the final outcome, which is a successful transaction. Number 5 is after the transaction's completed, right? Hopefully we've exceeded expectations and built a foundation to have a raving fan mentality. But long-term relationships is preeminence. Preeminence is the act of surpassing all others and becoming the obvious choice. Preeminence builds humble confidence to become the most trusted advisor for life. The difference between a client and a customer is that a client is someone under the care, protection, and well-being of a professional, and a customer is serviced by a salesperson for a transaction. Now, if any of you know Jay Abraham, he's very well spoken, and a lot of this is taken from his conversations, but it really strikes home with me because a client and a customer are not the same thing. Sometimes we use them interchangeably. But if you think about it, a client is someone under the care, protection, and well-being of a professional. Care, protection, and well-being, while a customer is somebody serviced by a salesperson for a single transaction. So are you treating your clients like clients or customers? Here's where Jay goes really deep, and I love it. You have a moral obligation and responsibility, the privilege to help the marketplace, the client to see, help the marketplace, the client see what they need to be doing, the criteria. You can't let them make a bad decision. You can't let them buy less than they should. Less quality, less quantity, less value. And you've got to take a stand and not be reactive and let them do whatever they want to do, because you know darn well that long term it's not in their best interest. And you've got to be willing to be their most trusted advisor. And as an advisor, you've got to tell them what you believe. You've got to tell them the reasons why. The overreaching value of how you should operate is the strategy of preeminence. It's a lot of words, but does that make sense to anybody? Does that strike a chord? Because preeminence is becoming the obvious choice. Preeminence is, when, an agent does a great job and the home seller goes and doesn't just give you their neighbor's name, address, and phone number. They don't just send a text message. They don't just call them and say, hey, I have the best agent. Preeminence is where that seller goes and tells you, Jason, I want you to come over to the house, and walks you over to two neighbors and says, hey, they're going to be selling their house. I want you to meet Jason because Jason's the best person I've dealt with, right? And the reason why they're doing it, Jason, is not because they love you. It's because they want their friends to get the best service, right? It's like when you recommend a good restaurant. Okay, you want to be associated with helping them find a great experience. And that was an eye opener for me when I put it into perspective of, in the instance I'm thinking of, this gentleman, Alan, literally walked our agent over to two neighbors and introduced them and said, this is the agent you're going to use when you sell your house, because that was the way Alan spoke. And, I told Alan that was really nice of you to do that for our agent. And he said, I didn't do it for her. I did it for my neighbors. And I had my aha moment. So preeminence is making yourself the obvious choice. And then the last, the last component, or the last stage of real estate mastery, which when I look on these calls, I see that we have so many talented people who probably don't need to be here, but they are here because they have an insatiable appetite to learn and improve. And number 6 is continuous accelerated learning is the ultimate competitive advantage, more powerful than talent, resources, or even intelligence. That's a quote from somebody you may know by the name of Warren Buffett, right? And if you think about it, have you ever seen somebody in sports who had a lot of talent who didn't really live up to their expectations? Right? It's because they didn't practice, they didn't invest in themselves like they should. And eventually the market surpasses them, or they never really do peak. So continuous accelerated learning is the ultimate competitive edge, more powerful than talent, resources, or even intelligence. There's another saying, which is the only sustainable competitive advantage in an organization or an individual's ability to learn faster than the competition. Because if Jason Panos was the best agent in his market, but Mary Jane was growing twice as fast, eventually, even the best will get surpassed, right? Because you have to keep reinventing yourself and learning new things to stay relevant in the marketplace. And then the last quote was one from a very famous person: once you stop learning, you start dying. Albert Einstein. Right? Does that make, I see a lot of blank stares here, but I hope this is like, resonating with the group, and I'd be curious as to see, who thinks that there's something missing, or is there something here that maybe you can build into your business mastery. How about you, Bobby Golden? I see you're on all of these. You're a force to be reckoned in Woodbridge. Are you there, Bobby?
I'm here. I understand what you're saying, Rob. I don't know if I could really answer your question at all. I don't know if I have an answer for your question.
I mean, is there anything that out of these 6 that you might take and say, hey, Bobby Golden's gonna, start to do, has an actual takeaway from today's session?
Well, I don't know if it's from today's session, but I'm doing things differently over the last several months that I haven't done before. Like, for an example, yesterday, Bobby Durso and I formulated and sent out a recruitment letter. We reached out to, and we're doing it in pieces just because there's a decent list of transactions, but we reached out to the agents, thanked them for their cooperation and their professionalism in our transaction of 2025. And then, we're following it up with a phone call to say, hey, did you get our letter? Have you thought about making a move? Are you happy where you're at? That sort of stuff. So we are doing something. We're doing several things differently, but I don't know if that, again, I don't know if that relates to your question.
So Bobby, can I give you a suggestion? You said, are you making, like, can you repeat what you said? Because I want to give you a small language shift that I think can make a big difference.
What I said was we asked them, if they're happy where they're at, would they consider a conversation about how Remax could help their business take it to a different level, that sort of thing.
Okay. So I thought you were talking in context of buyers, but I can reframe this for attracting people to your team. And instead of saying, are you happy where you're at? Maybe you could rephrase it by saying, what is working and what could be better. And instead of saying, have you ever had any thoughts of moving, said, hey, if you were to make a move, what would be most important to you? Which is a more open-ended question. Because if you ask me, have I had any thoughts of making a move? I'd say no, and the conversation would be over in my mind. And if you said, if you were to make a move, what would be most important to you, right? And I've learned that pivot from working with agents at their level, which is if you're talking to a client that you sold a house to, you say, hey, have you had any thoughts of making a move? They probably, if they're not really thinking about it now, they're going to say no. But if you said, hey, what do you like best about living here in C. Warren? And then the next question is, hey, when it comes time for you to make a move, Bobby, where would you and Jill, where would you think you'd go? Right? And you get a much better response when you leave that question open-ended, right? And you might say, well, when it comes time to us to make a move, we want to go down to Monmouth County and be near the beach or whatever. And then you say, what's the timing of that? So it's kind of just asking some questions a little bit differently. Does anybody else have any pivots on how you kind of, switch the narrative on that?
I think always asking a question that's open-ended is really important, and it takes practice. So I would recommend that people actually practice with someone in their office on that. You had said something earlier about kind of talking too much, and then at the end of it saying, do you have any questions? That's a conversation ender right there. So what you just said is really important. And also, if they do ask a question, if somebody asks a question that is going to require a longer explanation, instead of saying, do you have any questions, you say, what questions do you have? And you just mentioned that when you're making a move, not if you're thinking about making a move, when you're making a move, you've already kind of assumed the sale. So that they think about the future of if I'm going to make a move in 2 years, where am I going to make a move? So they're already engaged with you. So it's totally about how you ask it. And it's not saying, well, are you considering a move, but when you make a move. So I really do think that it does matter how you say something. I wanted to add something also to what we talked about a little earlier about learning. And the most successful people, the stat is the most successful people in the world in business read at least 30 minutes a day. And it can even be a novel, but that is something that has been extraordinarily important to Warren Buffett, and look where he is. So he has said that over and over and over again, and that's part of knowledge base. It's not like you have to go to college, but you've got to continue to learn. So those are the two things I have.
Rob, I tend to use the line that says, like when I'm talking to them, what part of the process feels the most unclear right now? Like, tell me what part of the process feels the most unclear. And then another one that I really dig a lot was as like a soft close is what would need to happen for this to feel like the right decision for you?
Yeah, both excellent for identifying where the tentative instincts are that are going to delay a transaction, right?
Yeah.
Did Glenn repeat those? Could you repeat those, Glenn?
So and I'll usually preface this first one by, I know I dumped a lot on you in the last few minutes. What part of the process feels the most unclear right now?
Okay.
And then the second one was, what would need to happen for you to feel like this is the right decision?
Thank you.
And inject pauses, inject things.
Yeah, I love it.
So Glenn, I'm actually writing it. What part of the process feels most what?
I'm sorry, you broke up there, Rob.
What part of the process feels most
Unclear.
Unclear right
unclear?
now.
And then what would have to happen to?
What would have to make you feel like this is the right decision? And just so you know, the unclear one, if it comes from the fact that as soon as you say, "Did I answer all your questions? Do I have any questions?" You might as well just walk out the door. You've closed the deal down. You're done. You're not going to win.
Okay, so and I want to talk a little bit about Jay Abraham's preeminence, and some of the bigger thought leaders that I have use this term, and they say that you have a moral obligation to help as many people as you can. That's the theme. Okay, because a lot of times we sit there and we look at our calling and we say, I want to do 3 sales this month. I need to make X number of calls to do Y number of meetings, to do Z number of transactions, right? But this part here, this is the first sentence. You have a moral obligation and responsibility and the privilege to help the marketplace, the clients, see what they really need to be doing and understanding the criteria. Not like a monetary incentive, but a moral obligation. Right? I mean, I think those are pretty strong words. And I've heard Jay Abraham talks about that. I know Chet Holmes talked about the moral obligation in terms of what motivated him. And if you look at, Jason, you mentioned 78,000 agents. I've done 5 transactions or more a month. Was that the number?
I think if I did the math right, it's 78 or 178 have done 5 transactions or more
For the year?
for the year last year.
That was probably 178, but it's still 5 transactions is not a living wage in real estate, in my opinion, right?
Not even close.
And it's not a full-time job either. So,
Well, let's be honest, we just got the notes out from Us Against the Industry. 11.3 is the average Remax agent, and nobody in this room is average. So we should be doing at least 12 transactions a year minimum because none of us are average.
yeah. Jason, I think most of us bring a better version of ourselves when we're trying to help somebody as opposed to trying to make a commission check,
Oh, 100%.
right?
I think that's why we
and-
show up to these. We can compare ideas. We can get out the things that we think through, and we can learn. I actually had my team. They're actually all on right now, and I actually put it on mute. This thing that Glenn just said, that is excellent. Write that down, and that's I think why we share this so that when we go in front of our clients, we can be the best form of ourselves because what we do, I don't go around and show a house and point everything out. I want them to compare it, and then I ask questions at the end and then allow them to dissect it in a way that I'm kind of guiding that. That's just my way. It's slightly different, but kind of the same principles.
So Jason, out of these, what do you think is the most important, or there is none that's most important because without the others, they kind of fall short? What do you think?
I think you have to have a little bit of everything. One of the things that, how you communicate, something Glenn said, if, at the end of the conversation, well, the conversation has to happen before you can get there. And if you don't end it this way, you're ending it all together. Something that Beth said I thought was excellent. One of the things I would tack on, the only time I don't ask open-ended questions is when I want a specific result. So we always say is you never, ever, ever ask the question, I'm not available right now. When are you free? Because the answer will be maybe next month. You walked yourself into that trap. So what we'll say is, are you available this afternoon? Would 2 o'clock be okay? So we're asking specific to a non-open-ended, but what Beth said is 100% true. Ask an open-ended question when it's a difficult question for them to answer, and that way you can go through. So I think the whole conversation has to be put together, but that's a skill trait that has to be learned over time. So I think all of it has to have some part in your business, or it tends to be it tends to be broken as you're going through your processes, your scripts, whatever we want to call it. And so the client needs to feel like you have everything endowed, because our value is from start to finish, not one aspect of the transaction
So,
and beyond.
so does
What about-
anybody have a like an aha moment in your career that you want to share with the group? Like, I did this for 10 years, then I figured this out and it really made a big difference for me.
Showing by agent, Rob.
I'm sorry?
Showing by agent. So me presenting my listings rather than letting people just hit a lockbox. Game changer for me.
So some people would say that that's inconvenient, but it's an extra value, right? And probably it helps you get them sold a hell of a lot quicker, right? And ultimately it's shorter.
More importantly, I'm canvassing the neighborhood. The neighbors come in and I get my next listing there. I've reduced my prospecting time by an hour a day by doing that on the weekend. And on top of that, I typically get a record sale because I'm presenting the house and not an agent that knows nothing about it. We got six buyers out of the one last weekend and 2 listings.
Great tip. And anybody else have any aha moments? Everybody's shy here, Glenn.
Well, when going back to education and learning, I part-time was an adjunct professor teaching principles of real estate, appraisal, and finance. And one of the things that became very apparent to me is in order to teach, you have to know, and you have to know current things. So this is where the homebuyer seminars are going to come in for the Paris Challenge. One way, but you have got to make it a priority to stay current in the market, and it's ever changing. So read the documents, know what you're talking about, learn more about it, mastermind with other agents, get on these calls, but you have to stay current. And actually, I got parents as clients from the kids I taught at the university. It was pretty awesome.
So Beth, let me just tell you something that maybe some of you might have a hard time believing, but when you give, you always get.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And, from the perspective of somebody who takes the time to share and teach somebody, it ultimately reinforces that in your own business, and you get something back in return. Because when you can take the time to explain and teach somebody a skill that you've mastered, it elevates and keeps your level at that highest performance mark, right? Because there's and this is a keeping current matters shout out, but most agents know what's going on in the market, right? They'll know that it's a buyer's market, it's a seller's market, inventory is building up. The better agents understand what's happening, okay? But these agents that understand what's happening, they're in a really precarious spot, because if you understand what's happening, but you can't explain it, then you can't get the impact by sharing it with your clients because they don't get it. You can't transfer that knowledge. That's extremely painful that's the case where that listing the property for 800,000 when it's worth 725 is a deadly mistake, but you haven't had the skills to explain why, right? You see a lot of agents in the marketplace that are there, right? And they come across with some lame justifications, like you can't reduce a listing that you don't have, right? Those people they're transaction-based people. They're not relationship-based people, right? They're just looking to figure out, how do I get paid? And they're willing to compromise their integrity to make a commission check. Now, if that's your only choice and you need to pay a bill, you might be tempted to do that. But if you can elevate your skill level and find a better way of communicating, you can get the client, whether it's a seller, prevent them from overpricing it, or a buyer who is afraid of the process and doesn't put forth the best possible offer, and they lose a property that could be their next house. Both of those, in my opinion, are unacceptable outcomes, and they're extremely preventable, right? I mean, we've all, at least earlier on in our career, we've had buyers that have lost transactions because they didn't have the confidence to bid up to the proper level to be the successful candidate for that transaction, right? And maybe we've even had it recently. Isn't that frustrating, right? And you want to try to say things, are you willing to lose it for $5,000 or $10,000, or $10,000 is going to be what, $7 a month? That's 2 coffees. That's 2 cups of coffee a month. You're going to lose the house. Has anybody ever had that type of dialogue, right? And sometimes
I just this past weekend had one where an old workmate found me on LinkedIn 30 years ago. He worked with me and said, I didn't realize you're in real estate, sell my house. And he wanted $100,000. He tells me the price. I never really asked the price, but he tells me the price is $100,000 over the market price. So I said, hey, I'll come back to you like I normally do with the comps and explanation. And in my explanation video with my comps, I said to him, hey, at the end of it, I said, I know I'm going to disappoint you here. I apologize for that. And I went through the comps. And then at the end, I said, I know you said you were going to interview some other agents. I'm going to give you a great tip. Please take it. Do not tell them the price that you want. Let them come in with the price that they're going to generate. Because what they'll do is they'll just say yes and take the listing, and you're going to be in for 6 months of misery. Get an honest assessment by not telling them the amount you want. And there's my tip for you. And he called me this morning and said, we're not going to interview anyone else.
Yep, you got the listing, right? Because you weren't afraid. You weren't afraid to say, go interview others, because I know once you find the quality of the competition, you'll come back to us.
And I also don't want to live by looking at my phone and seeing a number come in and being like, oh, I got to answer that. Like, why would you take that listing? Nothing's worth it. You'll get 10 more in its place.
Right. And Glenn, in terms of like mindset, like I want to drive this one home, which is, what's the purpose of the listing opportunity?
Completely to build relationship.
To build a relationship. It's not to make a commission, right?
Yeah.
And that's the difference between a customer and a client, right?
Yep.
And I think we've been taught in the industry that the purpose of the listing appointment is to secure the listing almost at any cost. And I think the reality is the purpose of the listing appointment is to, share with them the process that's going to get them the best outcome, and, set the stage for future business opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm looking here on the Zoom call, and I see Abe Himmelstein above you. And like when we have a recruiting appointment together on a Zoom call, the purpose of that call is not just to get somebody to sign up and join. It's to figure out if there's somebody that we can help, expand their career, right? And then hopefully they'll bring friends on because we've had an impact. It's not just to get them to sign up. It's the same concept, right?
One of the things I like to interject is, one of the things I use is overcoming objections. And one of the things I say is, what would it take to strike a deal? Then you'll know where they're at, if they're real or if they're a phony. But when you put that on, what do we have to be to strike a deal? You're going to get a definite answer, and you don't have to beat around the bush.
Right. And Abe, like, it's so much easier to hire 2 out of 3 people and hire the right 2 than to hire 3 and have somebody that is like a bad listing or has different expectations of what's going to happen when they join. Right. Because there's no magic. You don't get, to double your business by not doing things differently. And if I was out at your house, Abe, talking to you about selling your home, right? It's kind of like I'd rather disappoint you today than mislead you on the process, right?
I'd rather let you down now than come forth later.
Right, because I want to, even talking about how this industry works, right? Like we talk about what kind of a closing gift do we get a client? Like the best closing gift is a job that far exceeds the expectation, right? And we've talked about it on these Zooms. Sometimes clients give us gifts because we really, we've mastered our craft. Like we've seen it all. We're not fazed by the process, right? But a client is going to be fazed by like the bumps and the potholes that come along the way, right? But we know how to navigate them through the process.
But when there are bumps and potholes along the way, and they're consistently along the way in other transactions, that's where you can be proactive and say, hey, we're likely to encounter this kind of bump along the way. For example, your lender's going to ask for bank statements 3 or 4 times throughout the process, or twice throughout the process. And you may think they're being incompetent, but they're following guidelines. So just expect that, you know? And those kinds of things really frustrate buyers. But when you say it up front, just expect that to happen. It doesn't mean they're being incompetent. Then they're like, oh, yeah, they call and say, yeah, they asked for another bank statement. I remembered you told me it was probably going to happen. So thank you for doing that. Just those things that are consistent, we have to just say up front and get it out of the way.
So there's like a lot that we're unwrapping here, like integrity in the process. If you were to invite me to come co-pilot a listing appointment with you or a buyer meeting, I do not have commission breath. I have, relationship, collateral I'm looking to build, right? Because honestly, if I was sitting across the table from you, Mr. Panos, I would say, look, if you sign me up for this listing and you pay me 5 or 6% and we never do business again, would you be offended if I said, find somebody else? Like I would never be that brash, but I think you can feel it, right? You can feel my intentions because I'm not here to make a commission check because the customers, like they're looking at it, a lot of them, and they're saying $600,000 house times 5% or 6%, that's 30 or 36,000. What are you going to do for that 30 or 36,000? And then if you break it down when they have that mindset and you start talking about what you're going to do, you're losing, right? You're already losing the process. It's not about, how much is this or that worth? Because I've been there, I've done that. I've been talking about like, what am I going to do to earn the commission with an agent? And you know what happens? The customer doesn't even understand the industry enough to differentiate what we're doing from somebody else. And they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, Nicole, you know what? Discount company A said they do the exact same thing. And then you're pinned in a corner, right? There's no way out of that. So once you open up that box, it's just one that you can't get out of, in my opinion.
No, I think something that Glenn said that, and that's brilliant. About being honest with that person. When you're honest with people, I bet, and I would love to hear it in 6 months from Glenn about this client he just picked up. I wonder if he's going to pick up 2 or 3 clients because that client's going to tell everybody that, hey, he told me the truth, he took care of me, and I trust him.
Yeah, he set expectations up front.
That's why he is who he is.
Yeah. I think it's really the part is, Rob, I'm not smart enough to remember a lie I've told you. So why am I going to tell you an untruth that I'm not going to remember? I'm going to trip up and then I'm going to end up in the wrong side of the fence anyway. So just tell the truth, and if it doesn't work, go to the next one. I mean, life is really that simple.
Right. And Glenn, the people who have scarcity mindsets because they don't have systems, right? And they don't have confidence, they're the ones that are tempted to either directly or indirectly mislead somebody to believe that they can get something that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you take that step, when forget about whether you can remember it, but you take that step and you think you can get like the 1 in 10, like the miracle, right? It creates 10 times more work.
It does.
Right. So ultimately you're paying the price, right? Because you have to do a lot of dancing to try to get them to come back into reality. And then at the end of the day, are they going to say that that was a flawless, that was a seamless experience, that was what they wanted? No. They're going to say, you know what, selling real estate's tough. At best, they're going to say all the brokers are the same. This is the way that works. It's horrible. But that's not where we want to be. That's not the space that you want to work. You're better off, never mind never mind integrity wise, you're not better off taking it, but even business wise, you're better off not taking it, because when you get those calls from a disappointed client, that's a lot of wasted energy, and that brings us down, right? Hey, Glenn, you said you could sell it for 800. Why are we now at 699 and it's not selling? It's horrible. So
There's
please,
a cost for it.
Don't be tempted to compromise your integrity, right?
And Rob, the two things that you mentioned earlier, two tips I'll give. So one was, when you're talking about time blocking for prospecting time, I call it protection. I protect my time. I don't block time. It's that important that I need to truly protect it and defend it. And I think if people have that attitude and you start to negotiate with yourself, oh, well, I have a home inspection at 9:30. Well, then you've just let yourself down. You've negotiated with yourself. And how can you negotiate with anyone if you can't negotiate with yourself, right? You have to look at it like it's a protection of the time at all costs, not just simple, right? And I think on the second side, about how we deal with folks on the transaction piece, when you come out and you give someone information, they're going to tell someone that piece of information. And if it's wrong, it's just as bad as telling the world, right? So they'll tell 3 people what you did wrong, opposed to just telling them right up front and walking away and not having that black eye. And I just think that that's the mindset you have to go into it with, is that if they don't like the information, that's fine.
So Glenn, let me just, before we run out of time, I want to just kind of drive that piece home, because I think a lot of times we think we're being accommodating. Oh yeah, I'll do that home inspection at 9:30, which is right in the heart of your prospecting time, right?
Yep.
Seems quite honestly seems very innocent. But if you had a $3 million listing appointment at 9:30 that day, my question to you is, would you cancel that listing appointment to do a home inspection for Tom and Mary? Probably not, right?
Exactly.
And it's because of the perspective that you have. Now, I want everybody to take this and to calculate this for yourself. What's the income that you want to earn in 2026? Okay. So let's just say that you want to earn 150,000 in 2026. Take 80% of that, which is 120,000, and then divide that by, so 120 divided by 50 is $2,400 a week. Divide that by 10, which is your hourly rate, because most of us are probably prospecting 2 to 2.5 hours a day. And those 2 or 2.5 hours a day are generating 80% of your income. So my question to you is, if you're making $250 an hour, would you cancel that to go do a home inspection? Right? And many of you are going to see higher numbers than that. But you're really making your money during the time that you're prospecting. Right? You're not making money when you're, juggling transactions, doing home inspections. You're doing the fulfillment that needs to be done, but that's not where the money's made. The money's made in the relationships, the continuity, the consistency. So I don't know, if I offered most of us on this call, if I paid you $250 an hour to come to the office from 9 to 5, and you made $250 every hour, most of us would probably show up 5 minutes early and would not leave a minute late. Right? You'd stay the full time because you're making that money. Well, when you're in this business, people like Glenn and Jason know that when they protect their prospecting time, that's when they're making that money. You're making that $200-300 an hour, maybe even more. There's an individual, Joe Garcia, who doesn't attend these because it's during his prospecting time. But yesterday in Maryland, are you still on?
Yes, can you hear me, Rob? I'm here.
Yeah, so was it yesterday or the day before he came by and he's like, I went and I door knocked on 4 doors. I got a listing. I don't know how much it was for, but did you see him lit up like a
Yes.
candle, right?
He got it. Yeah.
Because he did the prospecting time. And how consistent is Joe?
Every single day. He's in the office at 7. He corrected me. I always say he's here at 8. He's in here at 7. And he does his calls every single morning and his prospecting every day.
He
Gets appointments every day.
He role plays and he gets the appointments, and he basically understands where the economic benefit is for him, especially as a younger individual in the business. And that's contagious. So I'm going to leave everybody with that.
Wait, I need to ask Glenn Baker. He said something before that when he sells a property, what did he do? He calls or he knocks on the door?
Regarding what listings? So
when you get something in a pending, you said something before.
First, when I put it on the market, I obviously put out a mailer to the entire neighborhood so they know I'm there. Then immediately once I'm under contract, I give them a teaser and say, well, I'm about to break another record. Here's how I did it. And I give them the bullet points of how we prepped the house and got it to market. And by the time they hit my open house, they feel like they've already known me. And I meet them at the open house because I'm the person representing the house, right? So I'm physically there. And I meet their neighbors personally, not handing it off to my agents. And then from there, I get the listings from the neighborhood. In this instance, a bunch of people knew of me, and they said they wanted to meet me in person to see if I was the right person to sell their house.
Oh, okay. And when you sell it, you said that you call them or you knock on the door?
I hit it from a couple different fronts. I dropped 3 voicemails. I do 2 mailers, and I don't do any door knocking. I don't have that kind of time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And Robert, you said something about the Garcia. What's his name?
Joe Garcia.
And where does he work at?
He works right here in Westfield.
Westfield, okay.
Yeah, you can look him up and
if you can send me his cell number, I'll appreciate it.
I will do. So if you just take this printout, go on to the hopefully I did it right this time and it was open and available for everybody to print. If you print this out, it's like 2/3 of the game. Okay, and if you
took the time, print that? Where do I go to print that?
That's on the email that goes out about the mastermind, the one with my little video on it. On the bottom, there's a link to this document.
Oh, okay, beautiful.
And I would say print it out, and if you just reread it, it will then really become second nature to you.
Sure.
And I believe your behaviors will slowly change so that you'll be the best version of yourself.
I hope so. I always do so. Yeah. If you can send me Joe Garcia phone number, that'd be great.
I will do. You got it. I won't forget you, Tony. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend. This was amazing. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great weekend. Thanks.